Hey, friends, welcome to the Living Truth Podcast. This is your host, Michael Carey here. And today I have a special guest and a good friend, Carol Juergensen Sheets. Carol is a best-selling author of multiple books, including Help Her Heal and Help Them Heal, which and we're going to talk about a new book that is coming out very soon, might be out by the time this podcast is released. But in the works. And so Carol is also known as Carol the Coach. If you do some searching on the internet, and she had a awesome radio show, which is currently retired, but has gone into YouTube videos, I think is what you were telling me, right? So you can still access a lot of that great content online. So welcome, Carol. It's so good to have you back.
Thank you so much. So excited to be here. We are in the same geographic area, and it's such a blessing to have you and Kristen right in my back pocket.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes. So definitely have spent a little time in person together. And I think that slowed down a little bit when you were going to Florida, of course, for the winter. We definitely have that in the horizon too at some point. So retirement, I think, is when we talk to our financial planners, it's really about when you're doing what you're called to do and you're making a difference and an impact in the world, retirement is just slowing down, isn't it? It's not stopping
Right.
completely. That's not what it's about. It's not how we would define it, you and I, would we?
No, you said it perfectly when you said if you love what you do, you slow it down so that your life is not as scheduled as it's always been. And my life has forever been scheduled since about age 15. So I'm looking
Wow.
forward to that, and I'm going to still be on faculty at ITAP, which it trains beginning CSATs, and I'm part of a certification program with ITAP where we train how to work with couples, and they've adopted, at least for now, my ERCEM model. And so I feel so blessed. I was on staff with APSATs and instructed with Barbara Steffens for over 8 years. So I have had the best of all worlds, and I couldn't be more blessed.
Hmm. That's awesome. The impact that those organizations and people, things, some of those we're going to unpack here today. So, yeah, that is phenomenal. The different pieces, I just want to comment on our listeners and helping couples heal from infidelity is the title of the new book, right? But I just wanted to mention this is something that everybody really needs to hear. Now, I know we have pastors who are listening, people in different, various jobs and ministries and things that help people in this area, as well as couples. We have divorced people that are going through at the very, very beginning stages of recovery from things like infidelity. But the model and the things that you teach in all of your books is helpful really for people that haven't even experienced infidelity because the ideas of empathy and you know I mean it's the stereotype guys really suck at empathy, right?
Well,
Just
I always say, I don't know if their compulsive problematic sexual behavior, sex addiction, took that from them, or if they just weren't encouraged in culturally, societally, to learn empathy. But when betrayal happens, they're in so much shame, they just shut down and they don't think they deserve a relationship and they don't know how to give back. And so that's why I wrote Help Her Heal, because I wanted them to have an empathy workbook to learn the skills that they need after betrayal. 'Cause, Michael, I want them to be filled with integrity, but I want them to be the best man they've ever been. And I tell couples, you will have a better marriage when you go through this process than you had before you knew about the addiction. There's no way somebody could be an addict, and we know that typically happens from age 4, 7, 8, 14, whatever. And they've always been holding secrets. And it's different than infidelity because there may not be that problematic sexual behavior. But once a secret is held, there is a huge divide in the relationship. And marriage is tough, so women don't know what's going on. They just assume it's the rigors of life. It's the kids, it's how hectic we are. So I want that relationship to heal for sure. Uh,
Hmm.
and I know you, I, and Kristen have worked really hard to create some building blocks for safety so that they can get on their way.
Hmm. Exactly. And for couples that are at the beginning stages, and maybe if they don't know that if they don't know if they're ready to do couples work and that kind of thing, that's helped them heal. And the ERCEM model, I think, is it's going to be really important for them to understand, even if they aren't, where is that going to fit into the process? And I think even for divorced people, the empathy in the ERCEM model is going to be important somewhere down the road if they get remarried. This
Well,
is
I am so sorry to interrupt you, but
mhm.
it's empathy and it's those relational skills that you can use with everybody, including your dog. But it's also that post-traumatic growth. I want people to get to post-traumatic growth, which means there's a new appreciation of life and they feel better about themselves than they ever have before. Their wounding is better, their family of origin is better. And whether they stay married or divorced, I want them to know that they can be a better human, whether they decide to get married or not. I hope they will.
Right. Yeah, so true. So my first question I want to talk about is ERCEM.
Uh-huh.
And what exactly is that? What does it stand for? And why is it considered the gold standard for working with couples and people?
Well, thank you. And he's actually repeating my words because I absolutely 100% believe it's the gold standard. And the reason is that when betrayal occurs, whether it's infidelity or sex addiction, both of their brains are compromised from the get-go. And a partner is reeling with, how did this happen to me? Why did it happen to me? Who is this man or woman? Uh, who do I love? What can I believe? What can I trust? Why did God do this to me? I mean, all those important questions keep a brain compromised because it is so foreign. The brain is flooded with feelings. And ERCEM is the early recovery couples empathy model. It says, don't get into couples therapy right off the bat, but get into early recovery couples work so that we as professionals can explain, how did this happen? We can make sure that you both uh, work within your shame or pain. And there is a protocol in that first stage of partner betrayal that says the person, the betrayer, has to have at least 90 days of recovery to get out from the fog of infidelity or sex addiction. And then after that, the disclosure is so important. And that needs to be the truth finding process for couples, but especially for partners, if he or she wants it. I'm trying to be more gender neutral, but we live in Indiana and most of my couples are heterosexual. And so it's very easy for me to talk as if the sex addict is a man. And I want to tell people out there where it's reversed, that we're building more resources for you too. Um, but I'm going to just assume that the betrayer is the man and the betrayed is the woman. And in stage one, that woman is in the driver's seat. Before, the addict or the infidel, that person was in power and control. But now that discovery has occurred, or confession, um, we need the partner to be in the driver's seat. So the partner's in the driver's seat, and she gets to decide what will make her feel safe. And sometimes that's the truth. Some partners don't want it or need it. That's fine too. It's up to her. But after that process, relational skills begin. And everybody says, oh, AVR is the most important empathy skill that's in help her heal and help them heal. But I maintain, in actuality, the biggest relational skill is reflective listening. It is sitting down together, facing each other, looking at the left eye, the window to the soul, and talking. And initially, the partner gets to do 80% of the talking because there's so much wounding. But what I love about this model is we're really sensitive to the men who've experienced the betraying, because now that they're out of the fog, they can't comprehend how they could have done this to their wife. I mean, in most cases, you can get a narcissist who thinks it's all about them. But in most cases, these are good men that went south for a variety of reasons. And most of the time, it has nothing to do with the partner. It has to do with their own woundedness, their own trauma. And I want to help both of them find safe ways to connect. And once they do that, which sometimes, as you know, Michael, takes, a year and a half to 3 years, then we can work on the grief, the mourning, the loss, and the anger. And so ERCEM has a whole second phase on that, where I bring them in and they do this work together and they co-create the grief that has to occur to get over there to post-traumatic growth. And then that's my third phase. And I really believe, based on the research, that what doesn't kill you does make you stronger. And I'm seeing where my couples get over there from year 3 to year 5 and actually leave legacies. They do purposeful work. They help others. More importantly, they build a better relationship and move forward in their life. And more importantly, they realize that they have to create a whole new marriage.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's ERCEM. 3 phases.
That's great.
Mhm.
And I have looked couples in the eye and have told them the possibilities are that things could be eventually they would be you would look back and say that things are better than they've ever been, than they ever were in the past. And that's so hard for couples to believe. In the beginning, especially, down the road, of course, and then they start to see it as they see the growth and the change and those things that their marriage never had before, like the vulnerability, the real, true intimacy of being vulnerable. Um, that so many of those things they aren't taught or modeled, and so many women have said in the past, my husband doesn't share his feelings and things like you mentioned earlier, talking through the genders. That is exactly what we see mostly in our ministry as well, is guys that are sexually addicted and they have betrayed their spouse through that. But for women as well, I think it's with all of the porn and all of the differences in sexuality and belief systems out there. I think I've heard of even women who are becoming, thinking more like in terms of a man and how they would think things through and approach stuff like their sexuality and intimacy. That's probably a different topic for another podcast, but
Well,
all of
I
these.
I
Mhm.
will tell you, I got into this field, and I don't want this to trigger anybody. So you might want to fast forward. But I got into this field because I was working as a mental health therapist in the biggest conglomeration of healthcare, IU Health. And I was getting calls from superintendents that didn't know what to do about kids having sex in front of other kids and kids having oral sex on the bus. And I said, to be very honest, I don't know what to do. I mean, other than educate the parents on educating the kids, I'm not sure. And and then the superintendents would say to me, well, Carol, that's not our greatest problem. Our greatest problem is that when 2 children are having sex on the bus, because, those seats are raised and the bus drivers can't see what's going on. There's 6 or 7 or 10 kids videotaping it. And so, it's going viral and it's ugly. And we don't want our school to look like we're not being responsible. We need to figure out what to do. And that's when I became a CSAT, a certified sex addictions therapist, to hopefully get to how to help kids. At that time, 2007, there were no services for kids. Now we've got some really good services. Gail Dines is the master of research on kids, sex addiction, sex abuse, blah, blah, blah. So as our generation has grown and as the youngins have grown up, I mean, so many colleges have porn parties, co-ed porn parties, and it is cool to watch porn with your boyfriend or girlfriend in your dorm room with 12 other couples or 12 other people. And that so desensitizes what's sacred and what should be set for love. And um, girls are getting so desensitized, females, and sex is becoming so much more transactional. And then for our males in college, a lot of times they're watching porn, but they can't have sex because they've trained their brain to want porn, that unrealistic, transactional, dopamine hit sexuality. And when you're intimate with your partner, it can be complicated, it can be messy, it can be work at times. And it's just easier for college age kids to want to please themselves by looking at something done. And so I have always wanted to help the world flip back to not um, a puritanical stance, but to a stance where we talk about feelings and love and romance and caring for that other person. You know, uh, the love languages says love is more about service. It's not about the dopamine hit. And that
Hmm.
Dr. Gary Chapman was brilliant, and he's had that work for 30 years. So I digressed a bit, but I just want our listening audience to know, even though you're in a crisis right now in your own relationship, the world has gone the wrong direction. And that's why people have gotten so seduced and desensitized and forgotten what they did to you. And ERCEM puts them back in that playing field of focusing in on each other. And it's a beautiful thing to watch because, Michael, it's the most painful thing to watch a couple struggle with the collateral damage from this horrible, horrible disorder. And so we watch the pain and then we watch them rise from the ashes with God's help.
Wow, that is, that really is important for parents to really hear that, the history. And I mean, for everyone to understand the history and how we have gotten desensitized to the real true intimacy of sex and what it's about and not, yeah, adult entertainment is what they've called it from the beginning, thanks to Hugh Hefner, and all of the way back when, even before that, before him. But the idea is using it as entertainment and as a drug, it's put into the category of alcohol and weed and all these things. It's
Mhm.
crazy, but that's really, it really does shortchange and create a counterfeit sexuality because true intimacy is so much better. It is when you really experience it, it's way better than anything when you look at it as entertainment. And like you said, just get what I think I need, and then I'm all done, and finished. But that history is that was so good. Thank you for sharing that. I think, and parents need to know and understand what really happens on the bus, what the possibilities are. I'm sure it's not every day and every bus, but certainly that
Oh,
does
absolutely.
happen.
Ridiculous.
It does happen for sure.
Well, and when it happens, it creates a curiosity that kids take with them and carry around. Um, you know, absolutely, intimacy is beautiful, and there's nothing more emotionally oxytocin producing than that connection. And yet, the great marital therapists and marital researchers, John Gottman, Harville Hendricks, I could just go on, they say if you want to grow yourself up and learn emotional maturity, get in a marriage, because there is nothing that's going to work you harder and grow you up faster than being with somebody and working out the nuances of, no, it's my way. No, it's my way. No, it's our way. How can I compromise? I say compromise is the number one relational skills for a marriage. And again, that's what ERCEM teaches, but not into the later stages of ERCEM, because to be honest, that partner has to know that she's going to be safe if she's going to walk through this process of healing. And so we are ultra sensitive to what the partner's been through. And I want that addict to walk beside her and help and learn trigger busting and empathy skills so that he has something to do relationally while he's working on his own recovery. And I've watched you work. I've watched Kristen work. We've done disclosures together, both of us, all three of us. And um, there are certain protocols that need to happen to create that safety. And I feel so blessed to be a part of that team. You know, Patrick Carnes taught me, he's the father of sex addiction. He developed the institute that's trained over 6,000 of us. Um, he said, to get through recovery, you need a team. And it's got to be a whole host of things. And so I call it my 10 tools. I added some to what he taught me, but they are that you get into a structured environment with other people that have this addiction, and you have a mentor or a sponsor or a coach. That's what, the living truth is all about. Men in the Battle has always been about that. And then you do the work within your group and you develop intimacy in that group so that you can take it out into the family, and you read the book, you do the work, and then you create the fellowship. That's the first 5. And then the next 5 are that you go to somebody who's really, really skilled in infidelity or sex addiction. In my infidelity book, I talk about, well, and it helped them heal too. I talk about your organization. I talk about Pure Desire. I talk about Betrayed Spouses Anonymous. I talk about Recovering Couples Anonymous. And of course, I talk about CSATs and APSATs because they're the governing board of educators for so many certified sex addiction and infidelity specialists. And I want them, if they can, to get in that group where there's crosstalk. I think that's so important. So they learn the information. And, I remember the old days when you would have panels, you'd bring the women into the church to talk to the men about what it was like to be betrayed, which reinforced what they heard from their own wives, but sometimes it gave them a different spin.
Mhm.
I mean, you've been a front runner, a pioneer in this work. As has Kristen. I love you both. But here's where it differs. I'm a big believer in accountability tools. After that disclosure, I think a polygraph is something that reassures both of them that the secrets are out. Now, some people give the polygraph ahead of time. That's not what I do, but I know the reasons they do. I think we all are different. There's good reasons to do it, especially if you don't think he or she's being honest. But I don't want them to be tethered to the GPS, the looking at phones. Sometimes that's as addictive for the partner as the addiction was for the betrayer. And so I really want to help them find safety and then move away from that and trust their gut again. Their gut is the best navigation tool. It just is. It just is.
Hmm.
So, to finish those 10 tools, I want them to pray, meditate, and journal, and I want them to read about their condition. If it's infidelity, I want them to read about it. The best book on infidelity is After the Affair. The best books on sex addiction, well, you've written some workbooks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Patrick Carnes, he's the father. Milt Magnus, he's amazing. Jake Porter has one out. I mean,
Hmm.
they're out there. I just want to say one more thing. The most beautiful thing about our field is that we were pioneers. You know, in 2007, when I started my podcast, there was not another podcast on sex addiction, not one. Matter of fact, my colleagues were afraid to be my guests. They're like, I don't want to talk about this stuff. Well, look at us now. There are thousands of podcasts,
Hmm.
and when I did my demographics, I was a horrible podcaster. I saw that the numbers were going up. It was 34 the first week, 3,000 the second week, and 100,000 by the end of the year. And when I looked at the end of the year, my demographics, this was totally about sex addiction. My demographics were women that were listening to try to understand what was wrong with their husbands.
Wow.
Now, this is not going to be popular, and I say it anyway because I don't care. Um, Eventually, I want people to move out of our groups and our therapy, and I want them to stop listening to podcasts. Um, I want them to move into more normal behaviors that no longer define them as partners. But I do want sex addicts to always do their work for the rest of their life because there is such a give back at the end of that and a reminder to them of where they were way back when and why they never want to go back there again. So it's a double standard. I want the partners to stop listening to podcasts and reading after about year 4. Uh, my job is to have her no longer be defined by partner betrayal.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, Carol, I think you gave me about 36 reasons or topics that we can have on 36 future episodes. There's so many things that we could explore with those 10 items. And yeah, that is incredible. Very, very helpful. I tell guys too about men in the battle in our groups. They don't have to be necessarily in that specific group for the rest of your life. But I tell guys, you do need a group of men that are that vulnerable for the rest of your life and really sharing. You need to be fully known. You need, so there are elements of recovery that they have to have for the rest of their life in order to stay on track. Because, we we still have this longing to be known. We have this longing to have people like us. The human experience is still the same. And yeah, if they don't have those tools in place, there's always that ugly word of relapse that we have. Um, we don't know what life brings and all of that. But yes, I wanted to dive into a couple of other questions. And why did you write this new book that's going to be released, I think, within the next couple of months, probably later in the summer here of 25?
No, it better be released by the end of May.
The end of May. Okay,
Yes. It's
spring. Yes.
supposed to be next week, but it better be released by the end of May. It's kind of like a contractor. Whatever he or she says, it's 3 times longer, right?
Yeah.
But I wanted it done by January. So I'm giving up till
Hmm.
May. And I wrote this book. I wrote this book for a couple of reasons. I know that there's a lot of couples work that revolves around infidelity, but I don't believe that therapists and coaches know how to slow things down for them too. And so it was really to expose them to ERCEM. Um, because my own profession as a therapist has done a disservice by inducing trauma in our treatment when we go too fast or we go too vulnerable or we ask too many questions that infer, well, were you having sex with him? How many times a week? Did you try to keep yourself presentable for him? Those kind of questions infer that she is less than. And there is no doubt that couples lose themselves when they're raising families and are in a coupleship and may put their own needs on the back burner, which could result in some transactional relationships. I mean, we've all been there where, you're kissing the kid, you're taking them to soccer, no, go to ballet. And, it just gets crazy. And same with our seniors, their life got very, very crazy in making decisions about retirement and taking care of grandkids. And infidelity is about reconnecting. It's more about that attraction and admiration and attention that one receives from somebody else that should be centered in the relationship, the marriage. And so I wanted to show people how to get healthier because these women are going through betrayal. It's not because their husband's been with 43 prostitutes or sex workers, but to lose somebody you love to another person, whether it's a month, a year, 10 years, or infidelity can become compulsive. And to need that dopamine hit can move them from infidelity into compulsive sexual behavior. And so I just wanted to slow it down and help relationships grow and expose people to ERCEM. And I really want people to know that early recovery couples work is the next step after discovery and disclosure. And do that for a while, learn how to communicate, learn how to support, learn how to be the person that says, I know I caused you the pain. And then when that happens, true intimacy can develop on that intimacy pyramid that we've all seen. You know, Dan
Right.
Drake and Janice Cottle, the Rap Smiths, they've all been instrumental in developing that intimacy pyramid for betrayed partners, whether it's infidelity or sex addiction. And I asked my couples to decide what values they want in their intimacy pyramid. You know, I asked my couples on session number 2, if we can work this thing out, what's your intention for your marriage? And I asked them both. And that seems incomprehensible that somebody who doesn't even know who she's living with could figure out what they want. But, they tell me at the end of our time together, that was their favorite assignment because it gave them hope and it gave them vision for what they wanted for their future. And that's what I want us to be as a community, as a beacon of hope, that they can really be their better selves for each other.
Hmm. I love that question. The thing is, most of the couples that have come to you, I'm sure this is the first time that they've dealt with this. You've seen this over and over and over, so you know what the path can look like. You know what the future could look like, but they don't, and that is incomprehensible when you to not even know. I mean, she needs to reconcile the past and all the things, that have happened that she didn't know about all through the years. It's how can you move forward into the future when you still have to reconcile all the past?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, it's the coaching in us that knows that you can still have a vision for the future and know that there's a lot of work that has to happen before. And that vision can change. One of the things I say for the couples that don't end up staying together, well, then I want to be your coach. I want to help you separate and divorce in integrity with empathy. And because that's important. you both owe each other that for the kids, for yourselves. We tell partners, you don't have to forgive. But you and I know that forgiveness is not for them, it's for us. And if we can find that in our hearts, way over there at post-traumatic growth, not in safety and stabilization or in that grief part, it's a game changer. And I'll tell you what, that grief work and that anger work is a game changer. Setting up structured exercises for the betrayer to watch and to participate in is mind-blowing for the partner. She feels heard, she feels validated, he gets her pain. And partners do so much better when they are consistently reassured, I know I caused you this pain. Even when they're in the middle of having a good moment and she's saying, I can breathe a little bit today. And he says, I am so glad, but don't worry. I know I caused you this pain and I won't forget. Even in our good moments, I just won't forget. It's my amends to you for my life, for your
Mhm.
life. Yeah.
Exactly. The amends is seeking to understand what it's like to be in her shoes and to have that empathy. That's definitely part of it. And so in your book, the new book here, Helping Couples Heal from Infidelity, is this a little different approach than sexual addiction? You're looking at the different elements of infidelity and unpacking that specifically. You started talking a little bit about that earlier, and some of the root cause of why this occurs and things. And then does healing from infidelity specifically look a little different than a larger, what you would call a sexual addiction? How different is that?
Yeah, the brain science is different in that different chemicals are induced. Dopamine's there for both, but oxytocin for the affair partner is also produced, and that's what becomes very powerful. And yet, both of those things were very slim. I mean, they wear down, and when a person gets involved with another person and tries to manage both lives, it's very draining. And then the affair partner gets tired of being the second fiddle. And it just has a total sexual cycle spin-off that all of a sudden he's waking up to, this is not what I thought I wanted. This is not what it was. And now how do I get out? And how do I get out without hurting anybody? And how do I get out without being discovered? And so it's very different because initially it was about those three components of affection and attention and admiration. That's what affairs, a lot of affairs start out of an emotional affair of just having that close communication and saying, wow, my husband and I didn't do this, or my wife and I haven't done this for years. And that intense connection. But we know, just as with any relationship, that infatuation wears off. And then you're with that person and you're seeing the good, bad, and ugly. And to have to manage two, three, four of those at the same time is very, very difficult. So we still work from a betrayal standpoint, but we want to heal the betrayer and help them find their self-esteem, their wounded places, their inner child, and really help them with that, as opposed to with sex addiction, where they got to do that work, but what they really need to do is build up their sexual integrity. And that means creating relationships that they can be honest with and improving their communication. They're two different ballgames. When I first did this work, because we are pioneers and very few people were doing it, we we became big fish in a little sea. And I was taught in my coaching that you're going to become more powerful and professional and well known if you work in a small pool of people. Create a niche. Well, I did that accidentally and it exploded. Now I'm in a bigger C. Infidelity is so rampant, and it does not necessarily have to be with sex addiction, although there are almost always components of sex addiction too. Pornography is the gateway for desensitizing important values in a relationship. So there's usually some of that, and there may have been some of those woundings that occurred for both groups, having been molested, having had sex play too early, too young, with older kids that bring on shame.
Mm.
Um, so the book that you're mentioning, Helping Couples Heal from Infidelity, the second part is to find love again. And
Mm.
that's my goal. I want to help people
Mhm.
heal through ERCEM, and I want them to find love again.
Mhm. There's enough differences in there that, yes, this is very warranted, and I can't wait to read that. In closing, just wanted to ask about resources. I know that I mean, we talked about coaching and counseling and different things. I believe that is there a certification program or training classes for ERCEM and whatnot? Can people find the taking the course or find a professional that's certified on a website? What would that look like?
Well, we just did a training 2 weeks ago, and many of your coaches have taken it. I felt so blessed by that. It's a 3.5 day training. If you're in the helping profession, if you're a pastor, if you are in the church, you don't have to be a CSAT or an APSATS to do it. Give me a holler. We're going to do one in fall. I don't have a date set up. If you're somebody who's looking for an ERCEM trained therapist or coach, I have a directory on my website, and that website is my old website, Sex Help with Carol the Coach. That was the name of my show, my podcast. But also, it morphs right into Help Them Heal. And so there are resources. All my products are available. I have online courses for partners to find their post-traumatic growth, for Help Her Heal, for Help Them Heal. Michael, I am so excited. Help Her Heal has been adopted by the 12-step community. And they have Help Her Heal groups now. And so
Mm.
that literature, they didn't even ask me, which is fine with me. Um, it is now SAA sponsored literature, and their meetings are on Sunday night at
Mm.
Central, 8 Eastern. You can go to saa-recovery.org to find them. And my book, if you want my book early, you can pre-order it by going to Stano Press, SANO, and then press, and you'll get a 25% discount on it before Amazon even has it.
Mm.
And I will be doing a course on infidelity, no doubt. And I will be doing infidelity certifications too. That's why I'm not slowing down. Even
Hmm.
when I said I was going to stop seeing clients, I said, but I'm going to still keep teaching because that's what I love to do. So I
Hmm.
invite all of your listeners to take a look at my website. There are free resources, the 10 recovery tools, videos on sex addiction. How did this happen to you, on partner betrayal? And with that, I've got to go because I have an emergency client next. But thank you
Hmm.
for the opportunity of getting to tell all your listeners a little bit about ERCEM, about the new book, and about my resources. It's been
Hmm. Congratulations, yes, Carol, for all of your success, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk to all of us today.
always a pleasure. I got to get you on my boat.
Yes, definitely this summer.
Well,
Yeah.
keep telling Kristen, you got to come on my boat. I'm just right around the corner.